So welcome to the dungeon of Naheulbeuk. I believe that's how you say it. It's a great game. I love this game. It's XCOM meets D&D meets exploration meets a bunch of other games. It's really really good. It's really really funny. The style is very cool. I like the visuals. It seems a little bit cropped here because it's on my ultra wide and I can't shift it onto my other monitor, but I've got it recorded in here, so you're not going to miss anything really. So let's jump in. So I've got a save lined up. There you go, class save. So I'll jump in. So this is a really, really, really good game for showing off modularity. So we've recently just talked about modularity. We've recently just got into Unreal, and we've started getting the walls and floors and doors and stuff. Now, in some games, it's actually quite hard to see this modularity in play, and in some games, it's really easy. Now, why this game, Dungeon of Naheulbeuk, is so good is because it's when you're in combat, it's a grid-based game. It's like if you've played XCOM, it's like that. If it's like chess, it's like battle chess essentially. But they've built the entire world like that, so everything is built to the grid, and it's quite obviously built to the grid. There are some areas where it's more obvious, but those are like obvious battle areas, and there are some areas like this, the little bar area here, that it's not so obvious. So I'm going to kind of like walk around, show you some stuff. As my little crew just kind of walks around. Like I said, I love this game to bits. It's so good. So yeah, this is a okay. So let's go for our list. Age. This game came out in 2020, so it's a 5-year-old game. Platform. This is on PC. I believe it's only on PC, which is great. Play style. It's a slow-paced. It's a medium-paced, slow-paced battle game. If you played XCOM, it's that kind of stuff. It's strategy. It's turn-based combat. It's not super fast-paced, twitch shooting kind of stuff. Players, it might have a multiplayer component, possibly, maybe, but it's single player. We can think about this as single player. So age, it's 5 years old. Play style, it's slower-paced, turn-based combat, single player. Graphics, stylized. Okay, so that means that obviously we're not going for hyper-realism, but because it's single player, it means we can dump a lot of very cool stuff into the game. We're not worried about the multiplayer transferring back and forth from servers. The playstyle is slow-paced, which means we're not going to be able to hide behind a lot of stuff. Everything's going to be on show quite a lot. And age, within 5 years, meaning it's going to be within a range of kind of technology. And viewpoint. So I've introduced viewpoint as well. So viewpoint, this is like the MOBA style viewpoint. We're down, we're looking high, we're looking from high down into the engine, onto the group. I can zoom in closer, which is good, and I believe I've not played this in a little while. I can actually rotate. There we go. I can rotate the camera around, but we're still kind of far away. So this is, I guess, the closest I can get is kind of almost third person. So I can move around. And I can press Q and E to kind of rotate the camera around. I tend to keep my camera like this and like this. I like it like that. So let's go have a look around. So I'm going to head to a little combat section, and I'm going to show you how obvious it is to be combat. How obvious the gridding is. How obvious it's built around grid for combat. Okay, so now we're in a what was a combat area. It's not a combat area anymore because I've defeated the combatants. So first of all, what we need to look at is this right here, these little boxes. So the bottom of this pillar here, look at the square, look at the cube here. The box next to it, or the collection of boxes, but look at this as an actual like object in itself. This, and then the box next to it, and then this right there, and then here, right there. All these are exactly the same size. They're just literally different versions of that. So you can think about this cube shape here is like a bounding box. Within that bounding box is an area. So this bottom of this pillar here and all this is all exactly the same. So we can literally just copy paste, switch out, replace stuff. We're working to a grid. From here to here looks to be maybe 3 of these or maybe 2.5 of these squares in this area here. But then, oh, I've just noticed this. This little bundle of barrels here, which contain honey, or not, cenophores, jars, down here, all contain honey. But if you look, it's the exact same square footage. It's just a cube. So what I'm looking at this, and if I'm thinking of my little man here, or my thief, because it seems to want to highlight the thief, think about this as that 6 foot tall Manny mannequin, Manny the measuring device kind of figure. This is about a meter square. So this is our 1K square. So we're not thinking about that as flooring tiles. We're thinking about that as more like props and environment pieces. This is a 1 meter square floor element. But there might be, on the floor here, we might have a 2 meter section of floor or a 4 meter section of floor. We can clearly see that because we can clearly see 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so it's like this. This is like a 4 meter section. And we can clearly see the same thing happening. So we've got that. Oops, it wrong way. We've got the exact same thing happening here. We've got this pillar right here. We've got this wine rack right here. Again, it's exactly the same size. It's just this bounding box, or this floor, 1 meter square floor tile here. Contains this. And then we've got another one here. So we can clearly see how this is built to a grid. Clearly see how this is built to a grid. So that's what they're going to want to do in these combat sections, is basically have a room, exactly the same system we've been making. We just make a room, and then we basically start to fill it. Now, in this case, they've filled it with a lot of either 2 or 1 meter blocks, because that's really good for making these sightline blockers, for making cover, because this is turn-based combat. So we want to make sure that, you know, if we load in here and our crew is around here, that, you know, we're able to start, if the combat allows it, in a protective area. Or maybe, because I do remember this fight, we started right here at the doorway, so we were exposed and everyone else was behind cover. So yeah, you can clearly see how this is all built around a grid. This is literally just a 2 meter by 1 meter square here, and however many meters high. My guys will constantly chat on. So the floor pieces are really easy. So this whole thing is just a big square room that's been filled with some stuff. Dead simple. Dead simple. Now these pillars here, they're just half a pillar right there. Boom, that's half a pillar. So again, if we ignore these pillars, this is literally just a big square room, and they've put these pillars, which look to be, what's that? A 2 meter by a 1 meter deep here. 2 meters by 1 meter deep pillar. So we'd make this, and then we'd either make it as one. I believe there are examples of like full round pillars, like full pillar versions. But this is just a half pillar version, because obviously we want it going up against the wall here. There we go, going up against the wall here. So we don't need a full pillar. And again, that just gives us a little bit of interest. So instead of having like a big boring square room, we've got a square room with a little bit of like archway, implied archway here, and then we've got some stuff in the middle, because obviously we've got beams to hold up the roof, and then we've got stuff to kind of fill in the environment, and then we've got on the other side of the room, again, same thing, a wall with these 2 pillars right here. And again, it's the exact same, we just duplicate them around. And I'm looking around here, I'm seeing everything's just either 2 by 1 meter or a 1 by 1 meter. So this is a 1 by 1 meter, 1 by 1 meter, 1 by 1 meter, 2 by 1 meter, 2 by 1 meter. I'm not bothered about the height, because in this case the height can be anything. The height can be whatever we want, as long as the square footage at the bottom is a 1 or 2 by 1 meter thing, we're all good. So really simple. It's so amazingly obvious, but we're only looking at that because of what we do, because of what we're learning. As a player, we're not going to notice that. We're just going to kind of see an environment until you've played these types of games, or this game enough, you'll kind of get that sixth sense of, oh, this is a battle scene, this is a battle arena, because everything's so evenly square. Now I'll show you where we kind of break that, and that's where we started off. So we'll say goodbye to this room. This room could be a battle room, but I know it's not. But we're still doing the same thing. We're still having the exact same stuff happening. So tables, this little cooker here. We've got this big table here. This big table here. We've got some shelves in the background over here. It's still exactly the same. But if we head out here, walk past these guys talking about chickens. and we go here. Here's a kind of like a bit of a hub world. So this isn't a combat space at all. So there's a little bit more asymmetry. Some of these aren't, you know, very, very straight on. We've got some circle tables, we've got some square tables, but with the stools all pushed in. We've got a bit of a right angle here, which is quite fun. Again, square tables, round tables, fun stuff. But what we're not seeing, and why this is so cool, is this is all still built to the grid. It's just the way it's hidden. So if we have a look at the bar, actually, that's a good way of seeing how this is built to a grid. So we'll start off in this corner here. Now we've got a little square here, and then we've got a bit of square here, and then we've got a corner. And again, if we zoom in, we can kind of see artifacts of where these things stop and begin. So some of these look a little bit more rectangle than others, although I'm thinking maybe this piece here, I can kind of see it interfering with the wall a little bit there. But basically I'm seeing, you know, piece of geometry here. That's one piece there, and then we've got another piece there, and then we've got a corner piece, and you can see where these textures kind of end very clearly. Then we've got a corner piece, and then we've got this kind of like pattern on the material, this kind of like round pattern. Then it comes to a corner, then another round pattern, and then it kind of joins what I think is meant to be. Yeah, this is meant to be like a bar door. It's like a flip bar door thing. It doesn't really make any sense. That doesn't really make much sense. In like texture wise, we go from something that's embossed and looks a bit brown to something that looks very metal. A bit of a giveaway. Maybe it's a bit of bad design that's been left behind. But then we carry on, and again, if you look at these tables, you can clearly see indications of where these things start and begin. So I'll move the table to there. There we go. So again, we're coming down. We've got a piece of table there. Then we've got a corner piece here, and then we've got a piece of table there, piece of table here, and maybe it's about there. So with these floor pieces, I don't think these are necessarily built to square, perfectly to square, but they're built to basically join together. Because I'm trying to see where there's obvious. I mean, that's an obvious texture seam right there, or an obvious geometric seam. And then we go across, then we get another obvious geometric seam. And then we go, and there's nothing here, and then we have another obvious geometric seam down here. So, you know, it's a bit hard to see exactly where stuff is, but then that just shows you good design. So move on here, and again we can see another obvious texture seam or geometric seam, and then we end here, and then we get the bar door section here. So that looks like the same width. So from here to just here looks to be the exact same width as this. And then again, well, another piece, then we got a corner piece, then we got another piece. The stuff which is upsetting it, or the stuff which is making it not very hard to see, is the stuff that's around it. Cups and barrels and bottles and plates, and there's little like trays or like cutting boards with meat on them and stuff, and bar stools and crap on the ground over here. That's the stuff which is, one, easy to make, we call it clutter, but two, helps give life to the scene. So behind the bar here we've got these shelves, and then we've got all these little cups and mugs and boxes and bits of foliage, and we've got these bits of foliage wrapping around here. It all hides the seams, it all hides what's going on in the background. Because again, if we were to strip all this environment out into nothing, it'd be very, very boring. So let's move on to another little bit of an area. So we'll travel around here, past the guy, the prowler, whatever he's called. And again, we're met with exactly the same thing. So we're met with another bunch of tables. Now, what's very maybe happening is, even though some of the geometry is different, we've already seen this kind of thing in play. This will be the exact same footprint as what's happening in the bar. It's just different geometry, but the actual scale and how things meet is exactly the same. All exactly the same. It's just they wanted to give a bit of a different kind of look here, a bit more scrappier. So instead of having a solid bar, we've got a barrel supporting a table here. This we've seen before because this is the exact same swing top bar door that's on the bar. And then we've got the exact same corners, exact same lengths. It's just this is a bit of a different texture. Well, a completely different texture. So that's the difference. That's what's making this different to this. It's very cool. Very, very cool. So let's find another little... Actually, we'll talk about this. So I cannot see any floor tile texture separations or material separations that let me know that this is like 8 meter by 8 meter or 4 meter by 4 meter chunk of flooring. So I've got to kind of use my best judgment. I've kind of got to use my best guess. So if we start at the what would be the corner of the wall here, and I'm going to say that maybe this is split up into either 2 or 3 from this wall here to this wall here. Maybe that's 2 or 3. So I'll go for 2. So I go from here. It's in the middle. So maybe that whole section there. Okay. So from there, come up to here. It's about there. And then from there, coming down to about here. Okay, that feels like maybe this whole section is a 6, so a 2 by 3 chunk of floor. So it'd be 2/8 by 3/8. Now what's really nice as well is separating out these environment floor tiles, floor panels with quite basic things. So we've got this, and in fact, can we see it clipping through? So I don't know if you can see that. You can kind of see this little floor tile thing clipping through right here. Can I get a bit closer to that? So just where... So my range is being pervy apparently. So you can just see here where this floor tile section is just sticking out the bottom. That tells me that that's like just smashed in. It's just a piece of geometry smashed in. It's not built into the floor. It's not built into the walls. They've got this gap in the wall here, and this once was a portcullis that's a drop down or gone up depending which way it goes. So they basically had that as a pre-made thing and brought it in, thinking like, okay, then we're going to have that element here. We'll just bring it in. And on the opposite side, we've got another way of combating it, and the very, very simple way of combating it. And it's just simply bits of wood. Really, just flat textures. So this, oh, actually, you know what? Oh, that's a bit naughty. That is naughty. I've never noticed that. So here, that piece of wood only goes to there. Ooh, see, when we start looking around games, we start to see stuff. So you can clearly see that this is just a flat plane of geometry. This like long flat piece. That they apparently don't continue on. So obviously that's where the level designers have kind of messed up a little bit. Very interesting. So if we walk into this room, again, this isn't a combat room, but this is a really good place to see the square element thing coming in. So the floor is just a big square element, big square foot. So we can literally see on the floor how this room is broken up. But I don't think it's 1 by 1. I don't think it's like each one of these is an individual one piece. This might be 2 by 2. It could be 3 by 3. It could be a 4 by 4. Depending on how big the actual piece of flooring geometry is, or how they're actually approaching the flooring in here. Because again, there might be tricks that they're doing inside the engine that we just can't see. We're assuming stuff. So this flooring section here just might be, again, ignore these big pillars at the side. This originally would have just been a big square room. And this could be, oh, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's call it a 4 by 4. So there's 4 by 4. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Okay, so there, that's like maybe a 4 by 4 block of floor room. And again, they've upset it just by 1, filling it with stuff. 2, putting in these thicker walls to help give a little bit more kind of castle-y feel, because obviously these castle walls are big and thick. And then in this case, what they've done is with this hole in the wall, which, you know, could be a door, whatever, they've turned this into a bar using the exact same geometry that we've used before. This is just a bar. A few little other bits just to upset the shape. So they've brought in this pillar, these kind of cross beams to give it a bit more of a look. Put stuff on top of the bar to once again upset the obviousness of it, hide stuff, and they pushed it out. So that then takes a little bit of that room away. takes a chunk out, and then they've just replaced some of that texture there with the wooden flooring. Very, very cool. Like I said, this game is a great game to look at and visualize all these kind of obviously built to grid modular assets. It's also quite a big game, so they would have. I'm lost now. They would have not had the time or the budget or the manpower to make a massively ornate, bespoke environment. It's a relatively small studio that did this. So what I'm doing is going to another little area. I think it's over here anyway. Yep. So this is another combat. This is another combat area here. So we're using the exact same scaling. These are all them 1 meter by 1 meter square areas. In this case, instead of tables, what we've got are these knockdown pillars. But what they will do is take up the exact same amount of space. They'll be built to the same scale, but all they're doing there is providing another way of cover, another kind of cover. But the whole thing, once again, is just a grid. Built to a grid. Am I heading the right direction? Yes. Okay. Actually, no, I've not. Oops, daisy. I'm in the wrong area. Just to pimp the game a little bit, this is a really fun game. If you like turn-based combat, if you like D&D, if you like XCOM, it's very humorous. I think the character designs are amazing. I think it's relatively cheap as well. So as we walk through, you'll see that there's just the same assets being used over and over again. It's just that 1 meter or 1 by 2 meter or maybe big chunky sections. So I'm back. I am a little bit lost. I've not played this game in a little bit. So bear with us a second. Oh, I need to go downstairs. It's downstairs, that's why. It's not up. It's not on this floor. Because what we're going to look at now is some of the stuff we can do with walls. So, a lot of what we've got here is exactly the same stuff. Actually, before we go down here, this is what I'm going to show you. So, oops, before it disappears. There we go. So, this pillar here, it kind of implies one of them vaulted, arched ceilings kind of jobbies. But we've already seen this because one of these was in the kitchen that we looked at the very, very beginning. But there's a really cheeky thing that's happening here, and hopefully I can explain it right, and hopefully it makes sense, and you understand it. And it's more on the speed of building rather than anything else. So this is a big kind of like star-shaped, archway thing. I can tell there's arches coming off in this direction, going up to the other side, all that kind of jazz. If we were to see the roof, we'd see these archways gabling the ceiling. But if we look at it, and I'll try and angle the camera in a bit of a better position. Come on, come back. Oh, we had it then. There you go. So, right here. So if we look at this, we'll draw a line from this point here down to this point here. Okay, so that's half. And this point here down to this point here. Okay, that's half. Okay, that makes sense. You can see it's a very equal shape. It's a very even shape. If we find a halfway point, it makes it a lot easier. So yeah, there to there, it's half. There to there, it's half. So, well, we could model this in half and then duplicate it over. So why don't we just model half of it in this direction? Like we model this half, and then we duplicate over. We could do that, but we also we have that vertical, the line, that symmetry coming from here down to here. But like I said, we've also got it from here to here, which means if this is symmetrical in 2 directions, it means we could probably build this in quarters. So instead of building half of it, we'd probably only need to build a quarter of it, which is perfectly fine. And hopefully this is kind of making a little bit of sense. Or I can model this and I can show you at a later date. I probably will end up doing this. But again, is there any other areas of symmetry? So we've got symmetry going in this direction, which means we can model half, and symmetry coming across in this direction, which means we can model a quarter. But then we've also got symmetry coming from here down to here, and here down to here. So we've got 8 points of symmetry, which means really we only need to build this section. And if we build this corner, what we can do is basically just duplicate and rotate around to create the rest of it. bit of an insight into how 3D modelers' brains work when we get into it. But don't worry about it. Stairs, pillar. This is just a straight up cylinder. So let's go downstairs. And hopefully we won't have to do any battles. I don't believe I've got any battles down here. Go. So let's have a look at some environmental walls and floors and stuff. Oh, look at that. We've already seen that. We've just been talking about it. What's interesting, though, is when we were looking upstairs, I believe this section of the pillar was different. So what's happening is we've got a lower part as a module piece and an upper part as a modular piece. So we can decide, okay, I want this lower piece and then I want this upper piece, and we can basically mix and match these two bits together. And the little, thing there. There's a good place to show. This is the thing. Is it here? Oh, I think it's in here. Right, there we go. Yep, because this is cool. So a nice little environment to show you. There's not a ton of stuff I'm going to show you in this. The video is going to be relatively short. But this is a nice little environment because this is just a big old room. Again, it is a combat room, but it's a big old room. Nice and square. It's got two entrances. It's got obviously one here. This is where we come from originally. And then we come up, and then we've got one over here, which is where we can go to the left. And then we've got one over here where we can go to the right, which will go outside into a little outside area. Quite nice. Again, 1 meter square areas, 1 by 2 meter square areas. We're all using the same dimensions. So this is a nice place to show you because this is where we can think about our modular modeling kind of stuff. Some of the walls in here are nice. They're nice and they're actually physically modeled bricks and stuff just because they can do. All the floor is flat planes. There's no geometry on the floor besides a flat plane. The walls have got a little bit more geometry to them. But what we can do is look at these areas, remembering that scale we're working at, everything in cubes and grids and stuff. So we can see here that this section here, if I go more into what those, this section here is probably one wall. We can kind of see where the pillar section here is just attached to the end. So right down from here. In fact, yeah, you can see where the black of the void is there. So drawing a line right down there, that's probably the end of a wall. And then they tack this on the end. So from here, there you go, from here down to about here, that's probably a wall section. That's our SM wall full. That's one wall section. And as we rotate round, we've got what might be a third or a half wall section just to kind of cover this up. Cover this section up. And then we've got a door section. So again, this door section, get out the door. Oh, Ogre, please get out the door. There we go. Can I do this without? There we go. Okay, fair enough. So we've got this door section here. Now, again, I'm thinking about this wall section. We can clearly see. So if we look at this kind of pillar thing at the top, and then we look at the other side, we've got a pillar thing here. We can clearly see that is, again, one piece of geometry. That door has been made in its own kind of in its own way. It's not physically attached to the walls either side of it, but it's been designed and built so they kind of blend together. This is a little bit more tricky than what we've been looking at so far, obviously, because we've just been looking at flat walls. But this is just the next level of thinking a little bit more tricky. I'm not expecting us to do this yet, but it's the future. But you can see there that this is one kind of modular set piece for the door. So you'd put this in here, and this would be like the door section. And then here, when we move to the right, so this whole section from where the door ends all the way to the right hand side here might be made up of maybe 3 sections. I'm kind of looking at these bricks at the top. So what have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, 9. Interesting. So maybe these bricks are going to inform us where the split is. So again, I'm analysing. So from this corner here, we've got here, here, and here. So if that is the case, I'm looking at this brick seam here. I'm looking straight down. We can see that there's tiles that are aligned, bricks, sorry, that are touching that align to that. So, okay, I'm going to hazard a guess and say that this is a 3 brick by however tall it is section. So right there, from this down across to there, that's one section of wall. And then we've got this section here, and then we've got this section here. So that's 3 sections of wall to make up that bit. Now we've got this pillar here. This pillar, it's just put in there. I don't think it's actually taken any. There's nothing, like it's not deleting any wall behind it. I think this is literally just pushed into the surface to, again, stop this being just one big long flat wall. This has been placed in here to make it a bit more interesting. But this itself is probably one big full pillar like these at the bottom. These are obviously different pillars, where this has kind of got like an ogre face, goblin face here. These have got like people holding up the plinth. They keep disappearing. But I believe that, yeah, this is literally just placed into the wall to help separate the wall a little bit. And I believe if we look round, we'll probably see the exact same thing in other walls. On long walls, maybe. What are we looking at here? So window way. There you go. So there's another one right there. Again, it's just pushed in. It's just pushed into the wall. Now we'll have the exact same thing happening here. There might be places where these pillars that keep disappearing, it's because my mouse goes in there and it's how it kind of like, you know, doesn't clutter up the stage. These pillars here, there might be examples where this pillar is pushed into the wall, like this one, to help just break up the wall. You know, it's not cut in half. The wall behind it hasn't been deleted to make room for it. It's literally just been forced in. But I bet the again, if we think about this square, this kind of like 1 meter square that the pillar is sat on, I bet this has been built in the exact same way. It's just that it's not got as bigger a base. Where this has got like this big square base, this is rounder at the bottom. I bet that really the bounding box or its square footage is exactly the same. So that when it's placed around the scene, it snaps into the, you know, if you wanted these to be aligned to it, it would snap there. If that makes sense. I know that was a little bit confusing to try and explain, but when we come into modeling more, especially stuff like pillars and stuff, we'll start learning about, you know, you have a bounding box for all your pillars, and a bounding box is literally just, it cannot exceed those bounds, it cannot exceed those walls, but it can do whatever it wants within those walls. It can be a tall, fat, thin, whatever it wants, as long as it's within those walls. And all these pillars are probably built off the same, like 1 meter by 1 meter by whatever, how many meters tall kind of bounding box. The floor, though, again, this is just very probably a very clever texture, although maybe not. You know, some of this might actually be physically geometric. A game like this, as well, if we think about our checklist at the beginning, it's not an open world game. This game has floors and walls and kind of sections, so it doesn't have to try and compute the entire wall, the entire world all at the same time. So they might dump and dedicate a lot more geometry in these areas than they would do in other areas. It's actually really nice. If we turn around, there's a really nice, obvious like thing right here. So I've got this grate, but you can see how the tiles around it don't comfortably work with the tiles of the floor. It does look like it's just been stuck on, and that's probably because this is a square foot. This is probably a standard floor tile. So this is probably a standard floor tile that is basically just stuck on. So there might have been a piece of flat flooring here, and then they decided, right, we're going to change this piece of flat flooring to be this. To give it a bit more interest, to give it this hole to look down, to give it more like, ooh, there's dungeon below it. But yeah, looking at the floor, that might actually be geometric floor, proper geometry floor, possibly. Yeah, very likely it's looking like it. Or this also might be very clever camera trickery. Well, not camera trickery, but shader trickery. Some of the more technical elements of our job. And of course, what they're doing is just scattering this straw around as well. Does this scatter? All these straws are basically just scattered around in like little clumps to give the impression again of this is lived in. But it's also breaking up the flat monotony of the floor, so it's not just one big clean area. It's got a bit of dirt and life to it. And here, this pillar just in top, just in front of us here, we've seen this before. This pillar is what's in the bar, or what was in the kitchen, I should say. So exactly the same. In fact, that's probably identical, if not the colour's just been slightly changed from being a brown to being like a blue wood kind of effect. Now I'll probably come back to Dungeon of Naheulbeuk, another time, and actually do kind of like, let's look at something and let's model a version of it, or let's even make something similar inside Unreal to show you how this kind of stuff works. Because a lot of this is quite nebulous to talk about until we really start to get into it. You know, we start to understand these elements of Unreal, start to understand these elements of 3D modeling. But I really want to. I just saw it on my playlist and I thought, oh, you know what? I'm going to make a video on that because that's a really good idea or a really good game to show these kind of elements. If you've not played it, like I said, play it. It's a very fun game. It's not too expensive. It's nice and low poly. It's nice and stylized, which I'm always a fan of. It's not realistic by any way. But yeah, it's a really good example of how you can make really nice environments, but with very obvious like modular modeling. It's just cartoony, you know. It's fun. So I'm gonna leave it there. Very very short video. Maybe not explaining as much as I have done in other videos, but I think I'm gonna come back to this one again and do like a really in-depth. Let's look at something and let's make that environment in Unreal in a very basic block out, and then do some kind of like replacement item kind of, you know, quick change stuff that we can do in Unreal. Okay, so I'll see you in the next one.